So good morning students. I'd like to cover second part of unit 4, interactive Korn Shell. Topics to be discussed in coming few sessions are Korn Shell features, two special files, variables, input output commands, exit status of a command, evil command, environment variables, options, startup script. These are the topics which we are going to cover in coming few sessions. Coming to the session outcome, at the end of few sessions, a student will be able to understand Korn Shell features. So there are different Korn Shell features we are going to discuss. So at the end of the session, a student will be able to understand the Korn Shell features. A student will be able to implement variables in shell script. Student will be able to write input output statements in their shell script. At the end of the session, a student will be able to apply exit status of a command in a shell script and understand environment variables. These are the session outcomes which I expect at the end of the session from all the students. So I have a confidence that you people will understand Korn Shell features, variables, input output statements, exit status of a command, environment variables. Coming to the interactive Korn Shell, before going to Korn Shell features, we need to know what is a shell. So already I said what is a shell in unit 3. A shell is a command interpreter. It's like a mediator in between the user and the kernel. So whatever may be the commands which are given by the user, it is interpreted by the shell and convey the same to the kernel. So ultimately kernel execute all the commands. So the functions of kernel is it is responsible for managing files, it is responsible for hardware management, memory management, etc. So most of the case you people will be studied within operating system. Korn Shell is developed by David Korn at AT&T Bell Laboratories. So it is a dual purpose utility. It is used interactively to interpret the commands. It reads the commands, it interprets and executes the commands. It can also be used in programming languages to write a shell script. Coming to the Korn Shell features, so the first feature of a Korn Shell sessions. When we use a Korn Shell in Linux operating system, we execute commands, all the commands at shell prompt. So within a prompt, commands are given in a command line. So the shell takes the command, interprets the command, understands the command and convey what task to be performed to the operating system. So your operating system will be taking care of performing the task. So here the commands are executed, all commands, right, in a Korn Shell environment, right. So Korn Shell session, within a Korn Shell session, you people are executing all commands in a shell prompt itself. Coming to the another feature, standard streams. So there are three types of streams are there. Standard input stream, standard output stream, standard error stream. So this standard input stream, standard output stream, standard error stream, we also call it as redirections. So standard streams we also call it as redirection. So what is a redirection? So redirection is a feature in Linux environment. So while executing a command, we can change the standard input output device or streams. So the basic workflow of any Linux command is to take input and give output. So try to understand the basic workflow of any Linux command. So while executing any command, so workflow is a command is given in a prompt. So it is interpreted and your command will be executed. So when your command is executed, so it performs three streams: standard input, standard output, and standard error. So there is a one operator which is used for redirecting a standard input is less than symbol. So the less than symbol for redirecting the standard input, and there are three operators for directing a data to standard output or standard error. So the three operators greater than, double greater than, followed with pipe. So all these operators, so about standard input, standard output. So here you try to recollect back which is discussed in third unit. Standard input means the file or a stream representing input which is connected to the keyboard. So through keyboard we can give an input for your command. So this stream we call it as standard input. The standard output means the file, stream, or standard output representing output which is connected to the display. So when the command is executed, the result will be redirected to a display, we call it as a monitor, or your output can be redirected to a file. So this stream we call it as standard out. Standard error, when a command is executed, so it might be failed for some reason. So and then your command will produce some error report. So error message will be redirected to your display. So when a command gives error message, so error message is displayed within your monitor. So this stream we call it as standard error. So diagrammatically we can represent like this: redirections, standard input, standard output, standard error. Take for example, I have a grep command. So you might be know that grep is for searching a pattern within a file. So here grep, the syntax is grep followed with pattern to be searched, space, file name. We are redirecting to a file. So here there are three file descriptors are used. So file descriptor 1, file descriptor 2, file descriptor 0. The file descriptor 0, we call it as standard input. So which is taking, your command is taking an input from your keyboard. So file descriptor 1, when a command is executed, so the result will be redirected to a file, or your result will be redirected to your display unit. So when a command is executed, when it is trying to produce a result to a file, so there is a variable, we call it as a file descriptor. Within a file descriptor there will be an integer value, we call it as 1. So if the file descriptor has an integer value 2, it indicates that a command is giving some error report. The error message will be displayed on your screen itself. So this we call it as a standard error. So you need to remember, so the three integer values 0, 1 and 2. 0 indicates that standard input, 1 indicates that standard output, 2 indicates that standard error. So this is an example for redirections. Here the diagram you might be already we discussed this. Coming to the another operator which we are using in the Linux environment, we call it as a pipe. So the pipe operator temporarily saves the output of one command in a buffer that is being used at the same time as the input to the next command. Take for example, we execute a command. So command produces a result. So the result can be given as an input for another command. So before giving an input for another command, so in between the two commands we are using an operator, we call it as a pipe. So here I have a command who. So who command is used for to know who are the users currently logged in. Here we are using a pipe operator. Alright, so this is a pipe operator. So after command who got executed, so the result will be stored in a buffer. So at the same time, so the result which is stored in a buffer, it is given as an input for another second command. So we call it as LPR. So this is a command for initiating the result of who to give as an input for your printer. Right. So this is one example for pipe. So there is another command, we call it as a T command. So the T command copies the standard input to standard output at the same time if the stream is coming from another command. So the syntax is T followed with options followed with the file name. So most of the case we might be discussed about this T command earlier while discussing about unit 3. So diagrammatically you can see and understand the command. So T command. So this is the first command. Already one command is executed. So after executed this command, so the result is given to the T. So the T is taking care in order to give us an input for a file or give an input or give the result of the previous command in an output. We call it as standard out within the screen. Alright. So take for example wc -l. So wc is a command for word count. So wc -l means to count